I awakened the most useless F-rank ability in history. Refresh. It lets me target non-living objects within a 1-meter radius and reset them to their original state. But in practice, I'd refresh a book and it was still just a book. Refresh a towel and it stayed a towel. So 3 months into the zombie apocalypse, my girlfriend grabbed the last half-pack of crackers, got in another guy's car without looking back, and tossed an empty noodle cup at my feet before leaving, like I was some stray dog. Don't blame me, babe. Your ability is just too useless. If I stay with you, I'll starve to death. In despair, I stared at that empty cup, and a crazy idea suddenly hit me. Refresh. The rich smell of braised beef suddenly exploded in the air, and beneath the torn packaging sat neatly stacked noodles and 3 seasoning packets. I froze. So my ability wasn't useless after all. We'd all just misunderstood it. This so-called reset to initial state didn't mean going back to how it was a second ago, but to its factory fresh condition, an empty noodle cup. Its initial state was a brand new, unopened cup of noodles. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest, not from fear, but from pure exhilaration. I looked around this ransacked convenience store. The shelves were littered with torn open snack bags, empty drink bottles, trash to everyone else. But to me now, this was a bottomless treasure trove. I didn't rush to boil water for the noodles. In the apocalypse, the smell of food could draw unwanted attention. I carefully climbed to the storage room on the 2nd floor and barricaded the door with heavy shelves. Only after making sure it was safe did I start my experiment. I put the empty cup on the floor and thought refresh in my head. The cup in front of me rippled almost imperceptibly, and instantly a brand new cup of noodles appeared. Again, I kept repeating it, barely containing my excitement. 10 minutes later, I'd piled up a small mountain of 60 instant noodle cups. My ability had a 10-second cooldown, meaning I could have unlimited noodles. Then I looked at an empty water bottle nearby. Refresh. Instantly, a 500 milliliters bottle of purified water appeared. I looked at the first aid kit on the ground, now just an empty shell. Refresh. A brand new first aid kit appeared in my hands. My breathing grew rapid. Food, water, medicine, the most precious resources in the apocalypse, were now inexhaustible for me. Lu Ruyan, didn't you say my ability was worthless? Just wait. One day you'll come begging on your knees, begging me for scraps. For the next 3 days, I locked myself in the warehouse. The mountain of empty packaging in the warehouse became my raw materials. Chips, crackers, chocolate, everything edible. I refreshed them into several large crates. Drinks and bottled water filled half the corner. Most importantly, I found an empty gas canister, paired with a portable camping stove from the store. I could finally have a hot meal. After closing all the warehouse windows, I boiled a pot of water, tore open 3 seasoning packets, and carefully placed the noodle cake inside. When that long-lost aroma filled my nose, I couldn't hold back my tears. I cried as I wolfed it down. Since the apocalypse began, this was the fullest, safest meal I'd eaten. After eating my fill, my mind began to clear. Staying hidden here wasn't a solution. This convenience store would be overrun by zombies eventually, or discovered by other survivors. I had to find a safer base. Besides, I needed weapons. Food and water alone, in this wasteland, would only make me a lamb to the slaughter. I packed all the supplies into 2 massive hiking backpacks. Then I opened the door a crack and checked the world outside. A few zombies wandered aimlessly down the street. I took a deep breath. I gripped the fruit knife I'd refreshed, now sharp as new. Time to go. Getting out was tense but uneventful. I used the maze of back alleys to avoid most of the zombies. When I ran into stragglers, I'd throw a refreshed full can of Coke as hard as I could. While it staggered, I'd finish it off with the knife. My target was Blue Bay Residences out west. It was a famous upscale neighborhood with serious security. The walls were high and thick. They'd hold for a while, at least early on. More importantly, my parents' house was there. I was at school when the apocalypse hit and lost contact with my parents. Finding them was my only goal now. But the journey to Blue Bay was tougher than I expected. The city was completely paralyzed. Abandoned vehicles clogged every main road. I saw too many tragedies along the way. Violent fights broke out over supplies. That is when I truly realized Liu Yanyan's betrayal was perhaps just in this cruel world the most insignificant part. Here, humanity had already collapsed. By dusk on the third day, I finally reached the outskirts of Blue Bay. The tall iron gates were shut tight. I could see guards on the walls. As expected, it had become a survivor stronghold. I hid nearby and watched for a long time. To enter the compound, I'd have to pass their inspection, so I packed my bag, stashed most of my supplies in a hidden sewer, keeping only 2 bottles of water and a pack of crackers, pretending to be an ordinary refugee, and walked toward the gate. "Stop, who goes there?" A sharp voice rang out from the wall. I raised my hands and looked up, my face dirty with dust and grime. "I'm a resident here. My name is Lin Fan. I live in Building 17. Building 17, Lin Fan, verify." The man above went quiet for a moment, seemingly checking over the radio. A moment later, the gate cracked open. A man holding a steel pipe, looking wary, stepped out. "ID," he said curtly. I pulled the ID I'd prepared from my pocket and handed it over. He checked it, then looked me up and down. "Just you? Where are your supplies?" I lowered my head at his words, my voice carrying just the right tremor of fear. "I was robbed on the way. This is all I have left." The man frowned. He seemed skeptical, but faced with my frail frame and pitiful appearance, he finally let his guard down. "Come in, remember the rules. All newcomers must hand over half their supplies for redistribution." My heart sank at his words. Luckily, I'd come prepared, so I nodded obediently, handing over a bottle of water and half a pack of crackers. The man took them. A flicker of disdain crossed his eyes, but he still waved his hand and let me pass. Once inside the complex, the scene let me breathe easier. The atmosphere remained tense, but at least there was order. People were patrolling. Others were reinforcing the defenses. There were also women and children gathered in the community center. It was like an island in the apocalypse, temporarily cut off from the carnage outside. An older woman at registration told me that a man called Brother Bao now ran things. He used to be the property manager here. After the apocalypse hit, he awakened Earth, element powers, and organized a guard to protect everyone. All residents received daily rations based on contribution points. To earn more, you had to join the patrol or logistics teams. I claimed poor health and didn't join any team for now. My priority was finding my parents. With an anxious heart, I ran to my doorstep, only to find the security door forced open and the inside ransacked. Seeing this, my heart plummeted. I rushed inside, frantically calling for Mom and Dad, but only deathly silence answered. A thin layer of dust covered the living room table, showing they'd been gone for days. There were signs of struggle on the floor, but no blood. A small mercy, perhaps. I collapsed onto the floor. Unprecedented confusion and fear gripped me. I had no idea where to search. As I sat there, dazed, footsteps approached outside. A leering voice rang out. Well, looks like we missed one." I jerked my head up to find 2 men blocking the doorway. The one in front had a shaved head, eyeing me with unmistakable malice. I recognized him. He was Scorpion, a small-time lieutenant under Brother Bao. Scorpion licked his lips, his gaze raking over me like I was fresh meat on the chopping block. "Your household head owed Brother Bao quite a few contribution points the other day. They got kicked out. This place is ours now." My eyes narrowed. "What did you do to my parents?" Just kicked them out. That is what happens to the useless in the apocalypse. But you seem capable enough. If you're willing to stick around and run errands for us, handle a few things, we might consider letting you scrape by here." I'd been so naive, thinking this place was a safe haven. Turns out, it is the same law of the jungle. As they drew closer, my hand slipped quietly toward the side pocket of my pack. Inside lay a fruit knife I'd sharpened to a gleaming edge. But just as I braced to fight for my life, a cold female voice cut through from the doorway. "Stop." Scorpion and his men froze mid-step when they saw who it was. Their grins stiffened instantly, replaced by fawning deference. The woman in the doorway wore black combat gear. She carried a Tang Dao in her hand, its blade still streaked with dark red stains. Several equally formidable team members followed behind her. I knew her. This was Shen Ling, captain of Blade, the strongest combat squad in the guard, rumored to have awakened a rare metal-type ability. Her strength was unfathomable. Brother Leopard's most trusted weapon. Shen Ling ignored Scorpion, her eyes settling on me as she asked flatly, "What is going on?" I seized the lifeline and spoke urgently. "They're trying to bully me." Scorpion's face shifted as he rushed to explain. Captain Shen, don't listen to his nonsense. His parents owed contribution points. We're just here to collect the property. Does collecting property require two of you and blocking the door? Her voice wasn't loud, yet carried absolute authority. Get out now. Scorpion fled as if granted amnesty, dragging his men out in a panic. Once the danger passed, my tensed body went slack, and I nearly collapsed. Shenling studied me, her brow furrowing slightly. Stay away from that crowd from now on. She clearly didn't want to get involved further. She turned to leave. I quickly called out to stop her. Captain Shen, do you know where they took my parents? They're Lin Jiangguo and Wang Shumei. Shenlin thought for a moment, then seemed to remember. Brother Bao sent everyone without supernatural abilities, along with the elderly and disabled who couldn't do heavy labor, to the abandoned factory outside the North Gate, calling it letting nature take its course. My heart sank. An abandoned factory like that. No food, no protection. How is that any different from waiting to die? Once Shenlin left, I immediately shut the door. I had to get to the North Gate factory. I had to find my parents. But first, I needed strength. I grabbed a chocolate bar from my backpack, wolfed it down for a quick energy boost. Then I spotted the steel pipe Scorpion had left behind. It was rusted and slightly bent. I placed my hand on it and refreshed it. Then, a brand new, gleaming steel pipe appeared in my hand. But that wasn't enough. I ran to the kitchen and found my dad's old, outdoor survival kit. Inside was a multi-purpose military shovel, a survival axe, and a dagger. They had all grown dull from disuse. I refreshed all three weapons, instantly restoring them to razor-sharp condition. When night fell, I slipped out during the patrol's shift change and quietly headed to the North Gate. It was far more desolate than the main entrance. Only 2 guards stood watch, yawning. I didn't alert them. Instead, I found a blind spot in the surveillance. Using the brand new rope I had refreshed, I easily scaled the 3-meter wall. Beyond the wall lay a wasteland. In the distance, I could make out a factory, like a silent steel beast. The air reeked of decay. Occasional zombie growls echoed in the darkness. I gripped the pipe and crouched low, quickly making my way toward the factory. But the closer I got to the factory, the more zombies there were. I hid behind a crumbling wall. At least a dozen zombies were gathered at the factory entrance, drawn by some noise, frantically pounding on the factory's sealed iron gate, while faint cries and screams came from inside. My parents were in there. I was frantic, but my mind warned me not to force my way in. I surveyed my surroundings and spotted a row of high windows on the factory side, roughly 4 meters from the ground. Maybe I could enter from there. Having made up my mind, I sprang into action. I grabbed a rock and hurled it with all my strength at an abandoned car in the distance. It struck the windshield, producing a sharp crack. Sure enough, the zombies at the entrance were drawn to it, turning sluggishly and shuffling toward the sound. Seizing the opportunity, I dashed to the factory wall. I pulled out a rope from my backpack, one end tied to a climbing pick. I swung it hard. The pick lodged firmly in the windowsill. I took a deep breath and nimbly climbed the rope, swiftly pulling myself through the window and rolling inside the factory. It was a massive production floor, filled with rusted machinery and scattered parts. Only thin beams of moonlight filtered through the damaged roof. At the other end of the workshop came muffled sobs and arguing. I cautiously followed the sounds. In a corner enclosed by discarded machinery, I saw dozens of survivors, mostly elderly and children. I immediately spotted my parents among them. They were huddled in the corner. My mother sat hugging her knees, crying silently, while my father held her tight, comforting her. My eyes instantly welled up. I choked out a cry. Everyone jumped at the sound of my voice, all heads turning toward me. My parents' heads snapped up. The moment they saw me, their faces shifted from shock to pure joy. My mother cried out and came scrambling toward me. Our family of 3, in this desperate apocalypse, embraced tightly. The joy of reunion washed away all fear and worry. But soon, a harsh voice cut in, shattering the tender moment. "Hey, where'd you come from?" A scar-faced man stepped forward, backed by several burly young men. Clearly the leader here. He eyed the bulging backpack on my shoulders, his gaze greedy. "You've got guts, kid, making it all the way here alone. What is in that backpack? Open it up, let's see." I stepped in front of my parents, staring coldly at him. "This is mine." "Yours?" Scar sneered. "Around here, nothing belongs to anyone. Everything belongs to me. Hand over the bag if you know what is good for you. Or else, he hefted his machete. The threat was clear. His thugs closed in behind him, eyeing me like predators. The elderly and weak, driven here by them, seethed with silent rage, but could only watch with pity. Seeing this, my father pulled me behind him and forced a smile at Scar. Boss, my son doesn't know any better. There is just some food in his bag. Take it all, just don't hurt him. Too late. Scar sneered. I want more than his bag now. I want his life. The moment he finished speaking, Scar lunged at me. A cold glint flashed in my eyes. Instead of retreating, I stepped forward. My steel pipe swung at a sharp angle and slammed hard into his wrist. A sharp crack rang out. Scar's wrist bent. At a sickening angle, everyone froze. No one had expected this scrawny-looking kid to actually fight back. Scar was sweating bullets from the pain. His face twisted as he roared. You hit me. Get him. Grab him. I'll make him wish he was dead. The thugs snapped out of it. They charged at me, yelling. I tossed my backpack to my parents, then raised my pipe to defend. One thug swung a wooden club at me. I dodged aside and flicked my wrist. The other end of my pipe caught him right in the groin. He screamed instantly, doubled over, and collapsed. No wasted motion. Every strike hit a vulnerable joint, just enough to protect myself. What terrified them more was my stamina seemed endless. After taking down 2 of them, the remaining thugs were terrified, too scared to step forward. Scarface clutched his broken wrist, staring at me in shock and fury. Who the hell are you? You're an ability user too. I didn't answer him. I just fixed him with an icy stare. All the suffering I'd endured these past months of the apocalypse, at this moment, blazed into pure rage. Leave or die. My ruthlessness stunned them all. Scarface's expression flickered. He hadn't expected to pick a fight with someone this dangerous. But while the standoff continued, suddenly, the factory's iron gate erupted with a deafening crash, followed by a second, then a third. At this, the crowd erupted in panic. The zombies outside were battering the gate. What is going on? Why are the zombies suddenly rampaging? Panic spread like wildfire. Scarface had no time for that. Together with several thugs, used their bodies and debris to desperately brace the buckling gate. But there were too many zombies. The gate was badly dented from the impacts, the latch groaning under the strain, on the verge of collapse. Despair gripped everyone. My parents shook with terror, gripping my hand tightly. I glanced over. It was an old, rusted iron gate. A bold idea formed in my mind. Then, gripping the steel pipe, under everyone's shocked stares, I headed for the gate. What are you doing? You'll get yourself killed. One of the thugs bracing the door yelled at me. I ignored him and pressed my palm directly against the cold, corroded metal. Then, as everyone watched in disbelief, a miracle occurred. That dented, battered iron gate, as though time itself reversed, gradually smoothed out, even the warped frame straightening. In mere seconds, a gleaming steel door stood before them, against the zombies' assault. The door held firm, emitting only dull thuds. The entire workshop fell deathly silent. Everyone stared at me dumbfounded. Scarface's mouth hung open, forgetting his broken wrist entirely. He pointed at me, stammering, Your power is repair? I couldn't be bothered to explain. I withdrew my hand and looked at him coldly. Strength is the only currency that matters in the apocalypse. My ruthlessness just now, combined with this miraculous display, had completely shattered Scarface's resolve. He looked at me, and his eyes held no more greed, only deep, gut-wrenching fear. Be big brother. I had no idea who I was dealing with. A man of your stature. Please don't hold this against me. I didn't say a word. I just walked over to my parents. My mother looked at me, her eyes conflicted, proud, worried, and almost like she didn't quite recognize me. I took her hand and gave her a reassuring look. Mom, don't worry, I've got you. Then, from that massive backpack, I pulled out a self-heating rice meal, a sausage, and a bottle of water. I handed them over. Mom, Dad, eat something first. The smell of food instantly grabbed everyone's attention. Those survivors, starving for God knows how long, stared at the food in my parents' hands, with loud gulps, their eyes filled with desperate hunger. Scarface and his crew couldn't take their eyes off it. In an apocalypse where food was worth more than gold, my casual abundance stunned them even more than fixing the gate. When I was done, I turned back to Scarface. From now on, I'm running this place. My voice wasn't loud, but everyone heard it clear as day. Scarface's face twitched. Finally, he hung his head in defeat. Taking over the factory stronghold went smoother than I expected. Against overwhelming power and endless supplies, Scarface's little authority fell apart instantly. I didn't kick them out. In the apocalypse, people are a resource too. I put them on guard duty and zombie cleanup. I'd handle food and logistics. Every day, I'd lock myself in a private room, pretending to check inventory, while actually cranking out food as fast as I could. Once daily necessities were covered, crate after crate of fresh supplies appeared before everyone. By then, every look they gave me was pure awe. They all thought I had a spatial ability, storing massive amounts of supplies inside. With plenty of food and safe shelter, the survivors slowly came back to life. Under my management, the entire abandoned factory became well organized. Mom and Dad became my right-hand team, helping me manage people and hand out supplies. They regained their dignity and pride among the others. Their spirits lifted more each day. Everything was looking up. Yet one thing still weighed on me. That was Blue Bay Community. That property manager, Bao, kicked out defenseless elderly people like my parents, leaving them to fend for themselves. I'd settle that score with him eventually. Besides, Blue Bay's defenses and living conditions were way better than this rundown factory. I wanted to give my parents, and everyone who'd stuck with me, a real home. It was time to go back and deal with Bao. 1 week later, I made all the preparations. I used my restoration ability on several abandoned scooters I found in the factory, restoring them to full charge, good as new. I also produced dozens of brand new protective suits, helmets, and steel-toed boots for weapons. Besides steel pipes and axes, I also had people take steel from the factory and forge it into sharp spears. As for Scarface and his top guys, they were now loyal to the bone. I gave them food and warmth, which was a life-saving favor in this apocalypse. I picked 20 of the strongest team members, including Scarface. Before we left, I looked at the team and gave them a quick pep talk. We're not going back to beg this time. We're going to take back what is ours. Blue Bay has solid walls and comfortable homes. We're going to build a truly safe home there. Anyone who is with me, get in. No one hesitated. After seeing what I could do, they trusted me blindly. A convoy of 20 vehicles rolled out in force toward Blue Bay. When we reached the north gate, the guards on the wall spotted us. Seeing our well-armed group, they froze. Scarface, didn't they kick you out? What are you doing back? Scarface was now my loyal man. He stood tall and answered loud and clear. We're here to talk business with Brother Bao. Business, you guys? The guard laughed. I stepped out of the car, walked to the front and said calmly, go tell Brother Bao. Lin Fan is back. The guard didn't know me, but seeing me at the center of the group, he could tell I mattered. After a brief pause, he got on his radio and reported up the chain. Soon, the north gate swung open. Brother Bao came out with a large crew, including Shen Ling, former captain of the guard squad. Brother Bao was a heavy-set man in his 40s, with shrewd, arrogant eyes. When he saw our group, especially our brand new gear and sharp appearance, his eyes flashed with surprise and greed. Well, little brother Lin Fan, long time no see. Where'd you hit the jackpot? Brother Bao, I'll cut to the chase. I want to move my people into Blue Bay. Brother Bao acted like he'd heard the funniest thing, bursting into loud laughter. Little brother, you awake? I fought for Blue Bay. Why should I let you in? With this, I snapped my fingers. Behind me, Scarface brought up a crate. Opened, it revealed a full case of sealed compressed biscuits. Brother Bao's laughter died instantly. The guards behind him all gasped. Though Blue Bay had strong defenses, more people meant greater consumption. Food had always been scarce. Their daily ration was barely a piece of black bread. Where did you get all this food? You don't need to know where it came from. I just need one answer. Are we working together or not? Brother Bao's eyes flickered. What kind of cooperation are you proposing? Simple, my people move in. We provide part of the food. You handle security. We manage this place together. Brother Bao's face darkened. Little brother, you're asking for too much. I'm the leader of this base. How could I possibly share power with some unknown kid? As equals, those are my terms. If you don't agree, we'll fight our way in. Fight your way in, with just 20 of you. Shen Ling, at his command, Shenling and the Blade Squad behind her stepped forward in unison. A murderous aura instantly filled the air. The Blade Squad was Blue Bay's ace in the hole. Every member was a battle-hardened ability user. My men instantly tensed up. Only I remained unfazed. I looked at Shenling, the woman who had once helped me. She was looking at me too, her eyes showing curiosity and surprise. Captain Shen, do you also think we can't get in? Shenling was silent for a moment before speaking. Mr. Lin, you're very strong. But Blue Bay has 200 guards. Forcefully breaking in won't end well for you. Her words were meant as a friendly warning. Brother Bao smirked triumphantly. You hear that? Don't push your luck. Hand over all your food. And I might consider letting you and your parents live here as ordinary residents. As for your men, send them back where they came from. That was his answer. Take all my supplies. Then get rid of all my men. What a slick move. I smiled. Looked like we had nothing left to talk about. I slowly raised my right hand and pointed it behind them at the tallest apartment building in the complex. I looked at them and said slowly and clearly, I'm giving you one last chance. Let me in, or I'll make that building disappear. My words dropped the place into an eerie silence, then exploded into deafening laughter. Brother Bao laughed until tears nearly came. Shenling, you hear this? That is the funniest thing I've heard all year. But Shenling wasn't laughing. She just stared at me hard, her eyes dead serious. She had a feeling I wasn't kidding. I really wasn't. Wiping the smile off my face, I started counting down. The grin on Brother Bao's face froze. Everyone's laughter died. They looked around at each other, starting to feel like something was off. That 30-story tower was Blue Bay Complex's landmark building and home to most of the guards' families. When I hit 1, Brother Bao finally roared, all bark and no bite. Quit your tricks. Take him down. But it was already too late. The second I finished counting, I unleashed my power, not targeting anything within arm's reach, but pushing my power's range to its absolute max, full throttle. I aimed at that massive building 100 yards away and thought, refresh. The whole world seemed to go silent. Before hundreds of horrified eyes, that 30-story skyscraper started flickering like a bad TV signal, glitching like crazy. His outline began to blur and fade. In just 1 second, the building and everything inside it vanished into thin air. Only an empty foundation remained, as if it had never existed. Everyone's faces froze, turning blank with shock and indescribable terror. Brother Bao's men completely broke down. They dropped their weapons and fled screaming in all directions, as if escaping the apocalypse. Brother Bao himself slumped to the ground, his face ashen, lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. His prized 200-man guard unit disintegrated instantly. Shenling and the Blade Squad behind her didn't break down, but every face showed nothing but shock and terror. Shenling's hand gripping her blade trembled slightly. She looked at me, her gaze completely changed. She was no longer looking at a capable survivor, but at a god walking the earth. I slowly lowered my hand and walked up to Brother Bao, who lay paralyzed on the ground. He looked up at me as if I were a monster, his body shaking like a leaf. Now, can I bring my people in? Brother Bao nodded frantically, scrambling aside to clear the path. I ignored him, turned to those behind me, and said to Scarface and the others, who were just as stunned, into the city. Only then did my team snap out of their daze. They looked at me, their eyes filled with fervent worship. They knew their leader was strong, but they'd never imagined this level of power. Erasing an entire building. What kind of power was that? Following a leader like this, surviving the apocalypse wouldn't be a problem. Our group drove into Blue Bay residences. While everyone watched in awe, no one dared stand in our way. Shenling and her Blade Squad followed silently behind us, like they were escorting us. I knew from that day on, Blue Bay residences had a new owner. After settling in at Blue Bay, the first thing I did was settle accounts. Brother Bao and his top enforcers who'd ruled through fear were locked up. I didn't kill them. I just stripped them of their powers. After evolving, my refresh ability could now work on living things. I could refresh a person's body, restoring them to perfect health. And naturally, I could also refresh the power core inside them, resetting it to before they ever awakened. When Brother Bao went from an Earth-type user to a helpless, overweight man, he completely broke. As for Shenling and her Blade Squad, I chose to win them over. They were real fighters. They still had their conscience. A rare find in the apocalypse. Right in front of Shenling, I refreshed a Tang blade dulled from combat, then refreshed a box of antibiotics about to expire, turning them into brand new meds. Shenling watched all this, and finally got it. My ability wasn't spatial storage, and it wasn't repair. It was something she couldn't comprehend, almost like a law of nature. A power so deep it touched the fundamental laws themselves. She stayed quiet for a long time, then finally bowed to me. Blade Squad, from today, we follow your orders. With the Blade Squad on my side, I truly controlled Blue Bay residences. I set new rules. Everyone, powered or not, got food if they worked. With my endless supplies, I quickly won them over. At the same time, I'd cleared out all the troublemakers in the community. Under my management, Blue Bay had been completely transformed, thriving and vibrant. My parents looked at me with pride and satisfaction in their eyes. They never asked what my ability actually was. They only knew their son had grown up and that he'd become someone everyone could rely on. Once the base was running smoothly, I started thinking about something deeper. What exactly were the limits of my ability? I'd refreshed instant noodles. I'd refreshed entire buildings. So could I refresh a living person? I found a guard who'd been scratched by a zombie in combat. Someone who had already begun to turn. Everyone thought he was beyond saving. I sent everyone away. I closed the door and placed my hand on his forehead. A soft white light enveloped the guard. His agonized screams gradually subsided. The mutations in his body visibly receded. I watched his wound vanish and felt a tidal wave rise in my chest. I'd done it. I'd restored his body to its original state before infection. This meant the zombie virus was no longer a death sentence. This discovery thrilled me even more than refreshing an entire building. If I could cure the zombie virus, didn't that mean I could save more people? Maybe even end this apocalypse. A grand plan quietly took shape in my mind. But before that, I had some personal business to settle. I called Shen Ling in and asked if there'd been any news of a survivor group called Li Huo, the one with Chen Yan, that D-rank flame manipulator, and my ex, Lu Ruyan. Shen Ling pulled up the map and pointed to a large supermarket in the East District. According to our intel, they'd occupied that location. They're the largest faction in the East. Their leader's name is Chen Yan, a peak D rank flame manipulator. A cold glint flashed in my eyes. Let's go pay our neighbor a visit tomorrow. The next day, I only brought Shen Ling and the Blade Squad. We drove in an armored off-roader I'd upgraded and plowed straight through to that big supermarket. The place had been turned into a solid fortress. Armed guards lined the walls. Our arrival immediately put them on edge. State your name. Shen Ling leaned out and shouted, Lin Fan from Lan Bei Base. Here to see Chen Yan, leader of Blaze Base. The men on the wall clearly hadn't heard of me, but they knew Lan Bei Base. Before long, the supermarket's main gate swung open. A man in a red leather jacket stepped out. Behind him was Lu Ruyan, all smiles and flattery. It had been months. Lu Ruyan seemed to be doing pretty well for herself. She froze when she saw me. Then her face twisted with open contempt and smug superiority. Well, if it isn't Lin Fan. Couldn't hack it out there. Come crawling to Blaze for help. She probably still thought I was that pathetic loser who needed her protection. Chen Yan looked me up and down too, especially when he spotted Shen Ling behind me. And the Blade Squad. A flicker of wariness crossed his eyes. But mostly, he looked unimpressed. Lan Bei Base? Never heard of it. We don't take in freeloaders. Since we're all survivors here, leave your wheels and supplies. And beat it. He was talking big. In his mind, his low-level fire powers made him untouchable. Lu Ruyan piled on, riding his coattails. You hear that, Lin Fan? For old time's sake, I'm telling you, don't get cocky. The way you are now, you're not fit to shine Chen Yan's shoes. I looked at her smug little face and suddenly laughed. Lu Ruyan, remember that empty instant noodle cup you threw at me? Lu Ruyan froze, wondering why I'd brought it up. What noodle cup? I don't remember. Get lost, you're in the way. I dropped my smile. My eyes turned cold. You may not remember, but I do. Today, I'm here to make you eat it. Lu Ruyan looked like she'd heard the funniest joke ever. Pointing at me, she burst into laughter. Lin Fan, have you lost your mind? Make me eat a noodle cup. What gives you the right? Chen Yan crossed his arms with a sneer. Pretty bold words, kid. Looks like if we don't teach you a lesson, you won't even know how to write the word death. The moment he finished speaking, a blazing fireball condensed in his palm, radiating intense heat. The Blade Squad members immediately assumed defensive stances. Only Shenling and I remained standing motionless. I looked at the fireball in his hand. I shook my head. Is that all you've got? Pathetic. As I spoke, I raised my hand. The blazing fireball, in Chen Yan's palm, was extinguished like a candle in the wind. With a soft puff, it vanished into thin air. The smug grin on Chen Yan's face froze instantly. He stared in disbelief at his empty palm. What happened? Where is my fire? He tried to summon his ability again, but no matter how hard he tried, not a single spark would ignite. His prized D-rank fire manipulation ability was gone. What did you do to me? Chen Yan pointed at me in terror, his voice shrill. I didn't answer him. I simply turned to Liu Ruyan, who was frozen in fear. Now do you see what gives me the right? Liu Ruyan's lips trembled. Her face was deathly pale. She had no idea what had just happened, but she had watched that terrifying flame ability fizzle out silently before me. Fear left her unable to string a sentence together. Shenling tossed her in front of me like a sack of potatoes, forcing her to her knees, tears and snot streaming down her face as she begged for mercy. I watched this pathetic display without feeling a thing. I pulled something from my pocket. It was a crushed, braised beef instant noodle cup, the same one she'd thrown at me before. I'd kept it all this time. The empty container in my hand instantly restored itself to a brand new cup of noodles. I tore open the packaging, dumping out the noodles and seasoning packets, leaving only the empty paper bowl. I placed it in front of Liu Ruyan. Liu Ruyan stared at the empty bowl on the ground, her face paler than a corpse. She knew I wasn't kidding. Her hands shaking, she picked up the paper bowl, forced to eat it while everyone watched. Tears and snot covered her face. Chen Yan watched this, and finally realized what kind of terrifying person he'd crossed. His legs gave out, and he knelt down too. I didn't look at him. I just watched Liu Ruyan in silence, until she swallowed the paper bowl along with the wrapper. The whole thing, the fall of Li Huo base, was even easier than I'd expected. Stripped of their leader's abilities, and terrified by my methods, they surrendered with barely a fight. I merged the two bases, and Blue Bay Base became the most powerful survivor group in the eastern part of the city. With Liu Ruyan dealt with, I threw all my energy into developing the base and researching supernatural abilities. Once word gets out that I can cure the zombie virus, it'll shake the whole world. Until I have enough power to protect myself, I have to keep this secret. I set up a secret medical lab, run by my parents, specifically to treat infected people who could still be saved. Everyone I healed was deeply grateful to me and became my most loyal follower. My influence snowballed. During this time, I also encountered other survivor factions. To friends, I offered supplies and aid. To enemies, I showed no mercy. Lin Fan's name gradually became legendary. Some called me a priest of salvation, while others called me a demon of destruction. But no matter what they said, they couldn't deny one fact. I already stood at the pinnacle of this apocalyptic world. Year 5 of the apocalypse. Blue Bay Base had expanded into a megacity of 100,000. We had a comprehensive defense system, self-sufficient agriculture, and restored social order. Here, people were smiling again, and I, as the creator and guardian of this city, rarely appeared in public. Most of my time was spent atop the highest tower in the city center, overlooking the city I had built with my own hands. My abilities had also grown beyond recognition. I no longer needed physical contact to refresh everything within my line of sight. I could refresh barren land and make it fertile. I could refresh contaminated water and make it pure. My power was approaching that of a true god. Shenling was now the supreme commander of Hope City. She stood behind me, reporting the latest developments. My lord, the horde from the west is approaching. An S-class mutated zombie with intelligence. An S-class mutated zombie with intelligence. S-class zombies are the ultimate catastrophe of the apocalypse. Each one possesses the power to destroy an entire city. At those words, my gaze pierced the distance. I saw that black tide of hundreds of millions of zombies, blotting out the sky and sun. And at its center, seated upon a throne of bones, an S-class zombie sat there like an emperor. It seemed to sense me watching it too. Its blood-red eyes locked onto mine in midair. A terrifying psychic pressure crossed 100 miles and slammed straight into me. Shenling grunted, her face going deathly pale. But I just waved my hand, and that pressure vanished like smoke. Ready, Shenling took a deep breath. Her eyes were steady. Hope City stands with you to the end. I smiled and shook my head. No, we're not dying. I turned to face her. And everyone in this city, this apocalypse, ends now. I walked out of Hope City alone, stood atop the city wall, facing that tide of zombies that seemed ready to swallow heaven and earth. Inside the city, 100,000 citizens watched me on giant screens. They were nervous, scared, but most of all, they trusted. The S-Class zombies' roar seemed to tear at their very souls. It commanded the horde to launch the final assault. Slowly, I raised my hands, as if to embrace the whole world. Everyone assumed I was about to unleash some world-shattering attack, but they were wrong. There was no killing intent on my face, only a trace of mercy. My power was never meant for destruction. It was meant for rebirth. I closed my eyes and released everything I had, holding nothing back. Not targeting one zombie, not targeting one area, but targeting this scarred, broken, dying world. Time seemed to freeze. A light beyond words, gentle yet endless white light, burst from me, spreading outward across the world. Wherever the light touched, the frenzied zombies stopped in their tracks. Their rotting flesh began to heal. Their clouded eyes cleared. The violence and bloodlust in their eyes gave way to confusion and humanity. The light swept across the land. Green grass sprouted from the cracked, parched earth. The gray haze lifted, revealing the clear blue sky they hadn't seen in ages. The S-Class zombie, seated on the throne of bones, watched in horror as its body transformed. It tried to resist, but could not stop it. This primordial force from the origin of the world. Eventually, it too regained human form, staring blankly at its own hands. The entire world had been refreshed. Everyone infected by the virus returned to normal. Every environment destroyed by the apocalypse came back to life, as if that 5-year nightmare had been nothing but an illusion. Inside Hope City, a deathly silence fell. Everyone watched through their screens, stunned by this miraculous sight. No one knew how much time had passed. The first person wept with joy, followed by a second, then a third, until thunderous cheers shook the entire city, echoing across the entire renewed world. They shouted my name. I stood atop the city wall, feeling the gentle breeze. I turned and saw Shenling. I saw my parents. I saw countless joyful faces filled with hope. I smiled. The instant noodles before me could refresh infinitely, and so could the world beneath my feet.